Ronda Rousey went on a crazy rant against someone that she's never gonna have to fight in real life. Kind of like all these MMA YouTubers that are always talking mad papas about fighters that they're not gonna have to deal with in real life. I've been a fan of the Netflix MVP card, and I've been talking about it a lot. I like what they're doing. I like the nostalgia. I like the familiarity. Look, we get attached to these people, and we don't want to let them go. And then when new contenders come up, we're like, who's this guy? We don't like change. Who is this? And then maybe a year later, okay, they beat a gatekeeper, and then we start to become fond of them. I get it. And then the people that we were attached to, they end up boxing Jake Paul or something like that. There's a natural course that we've become acclimated to, right? But Netflix and MVP, what they're doing right now, they've softened the blow a little bit. They've given us some more time with these fighters. And that's something that it seems like the UFC hasn't been willing to do so much recently, amongst other things. Why, Netflix found themselves to be a contender because of fighter pay or whatever. That's not what I'm trying to get into with this video. I'm just saying, I'm trying to lay some context here to say, I've been a fan. I even said, if they did the White House card and the Netflix card on the same night, I'm watching the Netflix card, but that was BJH. That was before Josh Hokett got added to the card. Things are a little bit different now. Now the UFC is starting to get in line a little bit. They started to realize, oh snap, these fans ain't playing around. So I'm just saying this to say I'm not coming in this 100% like a hater just trying to bash on the MVP card, because I've been rooting for it. However, I watched the press conference the other day and I was concerned because watching that press conference reminded me of some of the things that the UFC actually does right. And it was very bland. It was like watching an episode of Dance Moms, and they're all nice and they all get along. They all go to Red Robin after. None of the moms are telling the other moms that their daughters are ugly or they need to lose weight. It's like watching American Idol and everybody gets a golden ticket. I'm glad I remember this. Everybody wins, because I had this on my beanie earlier. And again, I'm saying this as somebody that's been doing nothing but championing the MVP Netflix card. If we had to pick one right now, the MVP card, the MVP promotion, at least as far as the MMA branch, because I know obviously they do boxing as well, it's kind of like the participation trophy promotion of MMA promotions right now. That's kind of what it feels like. That's the vibe that they give out in moments like the press conference the other day. And I realized more than ever, that's why you need some drama. That's why you have to have some conflict. And even when we see, not every fight could be like Daniel Comer and Stipe Muchacho, where we're like, I hope both of them win. I don't even know how, but I hope Bruce Buffer finds a way. It's like you most of the time want to have a hero and a villain. Even if the dude's not necessarily a hero or a villain, the dude you're rooting for just by default is the hero and the other guy is the villain. Oh well, sorry, maybe he's a good dude, but he's the villain, right? Batman needs a Joker. Superman needs Lex Luthor. Spider-Man needs Mary Jane. All of these dudes need drama in their lives. And we like to watch that drama. We like to watch that unfold. Just Law and Order. You got Law and Order. You got Law and Order SVU, Law and Order Criminal Intent, Law and Order True Crime, Law and Order Organ. They got like 58 different Law and Order. Same thing with the dude that wears the glasses and goes, yeah! The CSI. They have a ton. They find something that works. Soap operas. People need that drama. It's a roller coaster. If a roller coaster didn't have all the ups and downs and the twists and turns, if it was just on a horizontal plane, it's a trolley. It's a trolley now. Now you're not getting on it for amusement or entertainment. Now you're just getting on it because you live in a crowded city where driving a car is simply unpractical. So you just need to get on the trolley. That's what it is at that point. It's just matter of fact, A to B at that point. And that's what the press conference felt like the other day. And beyond that, what it reminded me of is, you remember when the fighters go to Azerbaijan? How weird it is? When they go to Azerbaijan, the dude could ask him in the conference, hey, you're fighting this guy, and we saw this training footage release, and you're going to do, this is good for your fighting style. What do you think you're going to do to him? Well, first of all, I want to say that Azerbaijan is the best place I've ever been to in my life. And, you know, I love the water here, and the air here is different, and the grass appears to be much greener, and it's here on my side. It's on my side of the street that the grass is greener, which is atypical. That's not usually how the illustration goes. But I'm standing at my hotel, and the grass is green over here. And then coincidentally, I went across the street to talk with one of my training partners. I went to the other side of the street where you would think the grass would be even greener, and it was the same. The grass is just perfect everywhere. I don't want to leave. I burned my passport last night. I'm staying in Azerbaijan. I have every intent of getting a bonus during this fight. I'm buying a condo. I don't ever want to leave Azerbaijan. I'm changing my name to Azerbaijan, first and last name. My name is now Azerbaijan. It sounds overdone, right? That's how they act. I don't know what it is about Azerbaijan. I don't know if it's like a Ramzan Kadyrov kind of situation. I don't know. I don't know anything about the politics, about the climate, but it's weird. I've never heard fighters act that way with any other place, but that's how it seemed with MVP. They're all so happy to be here. We're so glad to be out of that relationship. The UFC's a bad guy. They're like a bad boyfriend, and it's weird. Like, their whole thing is, we're not the UFC, and we're so happy to be here. It almost felt like, okay, they're the MMA promotion of the participation trophies, and they're the MMA promotion of Scientology. It feels like if there was like a Scientology promotion, it would be this one. They're like way too happy and just way too glad to be there. That's like all that they could talk about. Like, that's their whole thing. It kind of reminds me of when I was selling solar for a little bit, for a brief period of my life. And I went to the first meeting, and everybody they're like robots. They like seemed way too happy for indescribable reason, and I just never seen people that happy all in unison ever in my life. There was something very weird about it. And what's even weirder to me is it's like they're forgetting that they tried to go to the UFC first. And maybe that's making it why they're acting the way that they're acting. It's like a rebound. Like, MVP's like the rebound. You know what I'm saying? Because the way they're just talking trash on the UFC would just be like they hated it from the get, right? But they tried to do it with the UFC. So it's almost like with Hitler, where he was trying to be an artist, and he was trying to, you know, share his art with the world, but the world said, pfft, and the artist said, I'm artist. And then Hitler said, I got something else up my sleeve. It's kind of like when Charles Manson wanted to share his music. He just wanted to be one of the Beach Boys. And the world said, pfft, and then Charles Manson said, I got something up my sleeve. It's a rebound. They're doing this thing with MVP and Netflix because it didn't work out with the UFC, and now they're really going hard on the UFC thing. And it's kind of like when there's a breakup and all the girls are like, oh, you go, girl. You didn't need him anyway. We don't need no mans. And then you're 57 and you're still single because you had this little love fest going on, and everybody affirming and validating each other, and you never stepped outside of that comfort zone and realized that you were just being, I hate to say it. You were just being gaslit by somebody that wanted to run in the same circles as you, in the same type of comfortable situation. And you know what was weird? There was a lot of affirmation and a lot of validating there. They were clapping. Like if it was the Grammys, like if it was an award ceremony. Again, we keep coming back to this participation trophy. They were clapping after they were talking. Usually people are talking papas and they're saying, I'm going to do this to you and I'm gonna do that, and your family's of this and that, is something that they said from Twitter. These people were clapping after they were talking. And Ronda and Gina were talking about how they couldn't stop checking each other out. Mike Perry was wearing a Nate and Nick Diaz t-shirt, and he was saying that it was out of respect. You know, they'd done this and that for the sport. He was watching them as a younger man and stuff like that. Some people think that maybe it was a manipulation tactic, that he's just trying to draw some type of mercy from Nate Diaz. He's trying to get inside his head. But you got to think about it. Nate Diaz is someone that struggles enough to formulate his own thoughts. I don't really think it's practical to believe that someone's external thoughts could penetrate that force and get through to Nate Diaz. I don't think that that's going to happen. Maybe it was just out of respect. Ariel Helwani was treating the event like an open mic. He was joking about how him and Ronda had beef and now they're trying to work their relationship out. He was joking about how Gina just unblocked him before the press conference. He was joking about how they must have been talking about him when Gina and Ronda were talking about Kayla, and he was trying to make it about himself and be like real self-defecating about it. And then he led the charge in singing happy birthday for Gina and Nate. I've never seen a happy birthday celebration during a press conference. There were many moments throughout this event where Ariel kind of displayed how, it's weird, man, how somebody could seem so in his element and doing his thing and so in control when he's rocking the mic behind his camera. But then when he's out in public in the real world, it's like he's like that. Who's that one character from the Benchwarmers where he was like afraid to come out because he thought the son was going to murder him or something like that? That's what Ariel Helwani seemed like. And Gina, look, I have to admit, I didn't watch a whole lot of Gina content in the past. So I don't know. I might have to go back and check to see if there was some kind of change. But she seemed heavily medicated. She was talking. It's almost like if Ronda cloned Gina just so that she could get this clone version to fight her. And then maybe, I don't know. I don't know if she's trying to work herself up to Kayla. I don't know if maybe Ronda, her ultimate plan is to work herself back up to like Holly Holm and at least get that back. I don't know what she's trying to do. But Gina had me scratching my beanie. She was talking and acting weird, like super. So I don't know if she was in the back smoking out with Nate too or what, but she was talking really robotic and she had a real bad problem with her memory. She kept having to ask, could you repeat the question? And that like nervous laughter. She was having some issues. And it seemed very weird. And it had me being concerned about her going into this fight with Ronda. Like, what's really going on here? Is this a money thing? Is she in trouble? Did Ronda take advantage of this like unwitting lady? Because she seems so nice and calm and mild-mannered and mellow. It kind of doesn't seem like she has all of her wits about her. The only real drama that we had during this is when Francis Ngannou was asked about Tyson Fury. And he starts going off about how, yeah, he'll take that rematch. First of all, it's you have to take it in context with someone like Francis, because Francis always talks like if he's, on the stand in a courtroom. I don't know who he's been trained by. He probably actually was trained by somebody after he ended the life of somebody. I think he would have had to have been, because he probably had to speak to some people in regard to litigation. But he is always very like, I'm a beat around the bush. Like, I'm not going to really give you a straight. But the most drama I feel like that we saw was when he was talking about fighting a dude that wasn't there. When he was talking about Fury. And then the other moment was when Ronda was going crazy and really, it felt like clip farming. And that's another term that I hate to use in this day and age, because I know it feels like I just learned it on TikTok and now I'm trying to say it as many times as possible. But it definitely felt like she was clip farming and she was going hard and she was ranting and raging and getting heated. And again, for somebody that wasn't there. So we only had really 2 moments in this event where there were fighters actually getting a little bit worked up about a fight, but in both instances, they were about fighters who were nowhere near the vicinity with fights that were probably never, ever going to happen. But what I would like to say is, again, I've rooted for the MVP Netflix card. And what I think is very important to say here for some perspective is I think that this conference showed us why the UFC does do what it does. Now, again, this isn't the video where I'm getting into a bunch of things like how they treat fighters on an individual fighter-to-fighter basis, how they pay fighters. I'm just talking about some of the antics we see. For example, there's been a lot of people complaining, a lot of very confused people complaining about fighters like Josh Hokett, because they don't like what he does on the mic. Of course, they also don't like things to be boring. And these are the same people that have been saying that the heavyweight division is dead and the UFC is dead and MMA is dead. But then when someone comes in and does something exciting and then backs it up in the cage, they don't like that either. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much energy talking about such confused people. But I feel like what I saw the other day from the MVP press conference showed me why these things are necessary in the UFC. Because I've said it a lot, how I like the real old school, traditional type of fighters who show respect and honor, and they're more like warriors and traditional martial artists like Lyoto and stuff like that. But we definitely can't have 100% Lyotos. It can't work like that. You have to have some kind of drama. And Nate, I feel like, proved that at the press conference, because later in the conference, when it was about to finish, he was joking about how he got multiple raises. And again, we have to consider the source. This is Nate Diaz that we're talking about, but he said that he got multiple raises while in the UFC for cussing. It is such a big deal, the topic of fighter pay. It's such a big deal that it often scratches the surface of the mainstream. You'll even see bigger outlets that, you know, don't really ever consistently seem to have anything to do with MMA talking about fighter pay, because it actually cracks into the mainstream. It tends to be a big issue. So, you know, people going in there risking their health, their safety, their bodies, their lives, bleeding, breaking things, they go in there and they don't get paid right? That's a bad thing. That's an issue. That's a concern. Nate is saying, you know, when I did get paid more, when I would say some bad words, that's when I would make my money. I wonder how that would make other fighters feel. That's why people like Josh Hokett, while people are out there being crybabies about what he's doing, that's why people like him have to do what they do, because of what Nate said. They paid me to talk papas. They fight back when it's time to discuss a new contract for actual fights. But if you say some crazy stuff on the mic, they'll give you a raise. Now, I'll leave you with one last thing here that some conspiracy theorists are talking about. Don't you think it would be very interesting if somehow, some way, and don't confuse yourself and put up a stumbling block with the legalities of it. Just think about it. Wouldn't it be crazy if somewhere deep down underneath all of this, the UFC and MVP were in a partnership together behind the scenes, with Nakisa being the former CFO of the UFC and Jake and his partners owning shares in Endeavor, crossing over like this? Jake and Dana hanging out with Donald Trump on video. Now, I don't know if you guys know all of this. I don't know if you guys know that Jake Paul's partner, who owns MVP with him, used to be the chief financial officer of the UFC and worked very closely with Dana. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if you knew that Jake and his partners have shares in Endeavor. I don't know if you knew that. And I don't know if you saw the video with Jake and Dana hanging out with Donald Trump. Haven't you ever had coworkers that you didn't like? Haven't you ever had people that you beefed with, that you talk papas and you gossip? Doesn't that happen? Doesn't that happen in school? Happens at work? Happens at church? Happens everywhere, right? Do you think it's impossible? Just because we've seen Nakisa and Dana beefing and Jake and Dana beefing, these people talking smack about each other, saying this dude doesn't know what he's doing and he's a cokehead and he's a fake and he uses steroids. It's the same thing that they did with WWF and WCW, talking all this trash to each other for the late night wars, for the Monday night wars. It's the same thing. Would anybody have cared if they were all friends? If they were all buddies?